We're in the book of Hebrews. We're in chapter 12. And we've been in this passage for several weeks. Starting in verse 12, it says, "So lift up your hands that have been weak. Stand up on your weak legs. Walk straight ahead so the weak leg will not be turned aside, but it will be healed. And here's something else I want you to do. Be at peace with all men. Live a holy life. No one will see the Lord without having that kind of life. See that no one misses God's loving favor. Do not let wrong thoughts about others get started among you. If you do, many people will be turned to a life of sin. There's nothing I despise more than coming to a church and feeling like I have to go through the motions." And as we're singing and as we're worshiping together, I just thought, Jesus, you are alive and you're real. And I thank God that as we come into just to study the Word and to listen to what God is wanting to say to us, I love that we can call on God for wisdom, for insight, and that God wants to move in our hearts and in our lives. I think God's going to give us, He's going to move us forward in our journey with Him. So I'm going to pray before I go any further. Father, I do have words to say, but they are only words unless your Spirit fills. I pray that we hear your heart as it beats for us, that we hear your love for us and your call to move forward and to grow and to live more into who you have created us to be. So fill us this morning. Amen. Verse 13 says, "Walk straight ahead so that the weak leg will not be turned aside but will be healed." And the writer of the book of Hebrews, he's painting a picture for the people that he's writing to. And so far, the picture that he's been using has been that of a race. And he's challenging them, I want you to run with endurance. And we have this kind of a picture of a track, and we know something about the people who are running on the track that he's writing this letter to. These people who are running that he's writing, they're discouraged people. And they're not even sure that they have the ability to win the race. They're disillusioned concerning everything that has to do with the race. They thought God was going to do certain things in their lives. When they gave their heart to Jesus and they said, God, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to give you my heart. I'm going to give you my life. There were some things they thought, God, you're going to do certain things for me because I am now living for you. And one of those things is I really thought life would be better. But it was like the circumstances that they were in, the things they were experiencing, the pain and the troubles, it just kept knocking them to the floor. They were ready to quit. So the author challenges them in this chapter. I want you to quit feeling sorry for yourself. Get rid of, we've been talking about that, get rid of the excess, get rid of the fat, that baggage in your life, the things that are weighing you down. I want you to stop looking at everything that is going to distract you. Stop looking at the people who are criticizing you and saying the meanest things about you, trying to drag you away, trying to bring you back to your old life. Stop looking at them, he says, and fix your eyes on Jesus and keep running the race. And you know that there's a battle in your heart. You know it because there's a battle in my heart. It's a deep battle that takes place daily. And to look away from people that are wanting to slow me down, to look away from the negative influences, even in the church sometimes, it is just a struggle. There was a story of a prophet who had this passionate desire. He wanted to preach, and what he did is he would preach with passion, and he went on a street corner and he would just scream the message that he believed in, because he really wanted people to change. So he screamed and he preached, And for a while, some people did change. They would listen, and things happened. And so he went on, and more he screamed. And after time, people quit listening, and they kind of went back to their old ways and their own ways. And after a while, that was all that was left was this man sitting on a street corner screaming at people. And less people listened to him over time. And the more they moved away and stopped listening, the more fanatical he got and screamed louder. And finally, one day, a person came to him and said, "Friend, listen, I've seen you screaming. I've been listening to you preach, and I hear the message that you're telling us, and we hear what you think the truth is and how it is that I'm supposed to live. And for a while, people listened, but now they don't. So why do you keep doing this?" And he replied, "Well, at first I did. I preached and I screamed because I thought I could change people." He said, "But now I preach and I preach and I preach and I preach because I don't want them to change me. And I'm screaming because I'm telling myself that what I believe is real." Fix your eyes on Jesus. You have to look away if you're going to run with endurance. And so the author, he began by talking about the discipline of the Lord. He says, you forgot something really important here, some things in your past. Sometimes negative things happen to you, and sometimes there is a correction that happens in your life. Sometimes the things that are happening in your heart and in your life that you think are bad, some of them I'm allowing because I'm trying to prevent you from moving into another area of your life that could destroy you, destroy your ministry. But I'm allowing it. I'm wanting you to grow, and I'm trying to deepen your faith in me and trust in me. And when the discipline of the Lord comes and negative circumstances come, it's always for our good because God loves us. It's not a punishment. It's not a discipline. And the worst thing that you could do would be to dismiss it and to ignore it. The discipline of God is not designed to slow us down, though it feels like it does sometimes. It feels like these obstacles when they come and the things that just hurt and this weight, these negative circumstances, it feels like, and for me it has felt this week, like it just grinds me to a halt. The point of God's discipline in the life of a follower of Jesus, whether for correction or prevention or education, is not to slow you and me down. It is to build me up. It is to strengthen me. It is to make me faster. And it is to make me more skilled and more capable, and it is designed to make me stronger. Anyone who's ever trained and done any kind of athletic event, you know that. When people train, they use weights to struggle against. I've seen people, because I do a lot of jogging, I've seen actually people who wear these weighted vests to make running harder so that when they get to a race, they take the vest off, they're faster and stronger, and they have the ability to go further. They make themselves stronger by lifting weights, and when the weights get easy, they add more weights and they do more repetitions to build their body. The discipline of the Lord, when it comes, it is not designed to slow you down, but to build you up and to strengthen you, to exercise and to grow you. We are in a race. That is the picture that we've been given. That is the picture that the author has been sharing with us. We have to run it, and there's going to be obstacles. When pain and problems come into our life, they're designed to make us stronger, not to discourage or take us out. It says, stand up on your weak legs. Walk straight ahead so that the weak leg will not be turned aside, but will be healed, to strengthen them. When you're in a race, here's what I want you to do. I want you to walk straight. I want you to go straight ahead. I don't want you to get distracted by the world or by the sin or uncommitted people. And they could even be people that you love. They could be family members. They could be friends. They could even be people in the church. Proverbs 4:25 said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to run the race, and here's how I want you to live your life. It says, look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet. Stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. we've got a picture here that is painted for us, and here's what I want you to do. I want you to run the race. Are you doing it? Have you committed yourself to that? Good. Then we go to the next thing. Here's how I want you to do it. I want you to do it in a straight line. Not going to the left or right. I want you to stay in your lane. Don't go bumping into others. Don't go wobbling. Don't get distracted. Run straight ahead. And then he tells them why. Here's why I want you to run that straight. He says, walk straight ahead so that the weak leg will not be turned aside. Sometimes the reason we don't run the race, it's not because we're not committed. Sometimes the reason people don't run, and it's not because they're passive or they don't care. Sometimes the people who aren't running the race, it's not because they're stubborn and just don't want to run. It's not because people are rebellious. Sometimes the reason that people don't run the race is because they're just hurt. Sometimes we get hurt. You get wounded, you get disillusioned, and for the life of you, you just can't run. You have a weak leg, or it's been sprained, or it's been broken. And people who find themselves in that position, their deepest desire is, I want to run. I want to do this. I want to know how to connect to God. I want to lead and live a life of loving God and serving God. I want to. And so sometimes they'll even try to pretend. They'll come to church, and I'm trying not to limp in front of you. I don't want you to see that I'm damaged, that I'm broken. I don't want you to see that I'm hurting and that I'm wounded. And we can be fully committed to Jesus, and yet sometimes we still get so damaged. And when there are people in the church who are wounded, they start to look around at others. If you're wounded, one of the first things you do is we start looking around. How are other people doing this thing? And I start to get discouraged because it looks like I'm the only one. I'm the only one that's had a hard week. I'm the only one that had made bad choices this week. And I just got hurt. Something happened to me. What I need to know when I come and I'm a part of the body of Christ, what I need to know more than anything else right now is that when I'm hurt and when I'm struggling and I can't move, I desperately need to know that Jesus is real. Because sometimes I forget that. So the author here, he's writing to those people who are not wounded at this moment. He's saying, I want you who are not wounded. I want you to run straight. I want you to strengthen your legs and go. Run straight. I want a straight line so that those who are suffering right now, whose legs are damaged, so that they can see that it really is true, that it really works, that there is healing, that there is hope, and that this is so important. I need you to do it. I need you to do it for others. A weak leg will not be turned aside, it says. It means to have someone who is limping. It's a person they're sitting on the track and they're a runner, they're an athlete, and they are committed to the race. They have committed their life to this. This is what I'm going to do. But for whatever reason, at that moment, they're not physically able to run because of a damage to the leg. It's not a physical weakness like muscles. It is a damage that has been done internally, like a sprained ankle or a bad knee. Maybe you've got a stress fracture or some other damage that has happened. And there are a lot of reasons why you and I can get injured here. Maybe this person is limping. Maybe they're just struggling with their maturity, possibly with some maybe legitimate questions, kind of the maturity in Christ, with some real questions. God, I'm really struggling. I'm not understanding this thing, or I really need to know this. I'm really struggling. And sometimes those questions, they're very intellectual questions about the faith, trying to wrestle and know who God is. And sometimes the questions they struggle with are moral issues. God, I feel like there's some things that are in the gray area, and I don't really know. I'm hearing what some people are telling me, but then I don't know, and I'm struggling. Maybe there's young people who, what caused them to go lame was bitterness in their heart. It's not this rebellious attitude, but they heard this message all of their life, and they know the answers. But what they really need to know when the weight of the world starts to come on them, is crashing in on their lives, and all of the right answers doesn't seem to solve the problem that they're going through at that moment. When they're hurting, when they're lame, they need to know more than that Christianity is right. More than that, they need to know that it's real. Does that make sense? They need to know that this faith is real. They need to see that there's power. They need to see that there's something life-changing in this message. They need to see that there's a God who deeply loves them. Maybe that person who's injured is not a Christian or a follower of Jesus at all. Maybe there are people in this room and they're just thinking, there's something cool here. I like coming here because, either the music's good or I like the message or there seems to be just a warmth of life in this room. And the people, they seem to be nice, and they actually seem to like each other. And then they hear the message about forgiveness and love, and they're right on the edge, but you haven't made this commitment. And you know what they're doing when they're listening? When there's something interesting and maybe even something real here, the first thing they do is they start to look. Is this real? Because I feel like maybe there's something going on here. But is this real? So the author says, I want you to run a straight line. Because if you don't, the person who's not running, maybe whose leg is wounded or damaged, they're right on the edge of a commitment. They're right on the verge of giving their own heart and their own life to Jesus. And they're looking at you to know, is this faith in Jesus real? When you run like this, you might just bring healing to that person. When we talked about someone who is lame and injured, maybe it is you. Maybe at this very moment, you walked in today limping, damaged. And it's not that you're uncommitted. You're thinking last week, for whatever reason, I was running well, everything was going well, and I was trusting in God. But this week, I don't know where it came from, but I got bumped and I got knocked. A painful experience, and it just knocked me on my butt, and I fell in the gravel, and it's like I just slid, and I got gravel and rocks just embedded in my skin, and I'm bleeding. And I don't even know what to do. I'm not even ready to stand back up. And the deepest desire in your heart is that I do want to run this race with endurance and to live by faith, to really just fly. But for the life of you can't move, and your leg isn't working right now, and there's just damage. And we think that in church, we're all running the race. So with everyone running, and I'm wounded and hurting and sitting on the ground, I'm gonna stand up, and I'm gonna at least look like I'm running too, though I'm dying inside. And I don't feel a word of what I'm praying, but I'll just keep praying. I'll fake it till I make it, and I'll put on a mask, and I'll make the right image, and I don't want people to know. And there are a lot of reasons why we do that. When I was playing volleyball in high school, and I played on college teams also when I was young, I never could go very far in my volleyball career because I'm too short. And really, I was more like a magnet. Balls just like to hit me. Like in the head a lot. And I got injured a lot. Every year I would sprain or break an ankle. I was so bad. But what I remember most about being injured, the worst part was never actually the injury. What I remember the most about being injured was that I didn't feel like I was a part of the team anymore. I didn't go to practices. I didn't get to be a part of the camaraderie. And that's what bothered me the most. I felt left out. And what this is saying about that kind of thing is that if this is your situation, or if you're hurt and you can't move and you wish you could, one of the things this text talks about and means when it talks about strengthening the weak legs, it's not just a challenge for you to do that for yourself. One of the functions of the body is that we are here for each other. We strengthen each other. We build the body if you're injured. My response should be to help you if you're injured so that you don't get worse, for that person to not get left behind. My job as a follower of Jesus, not because I am the pastor, that has literally nothing to do with this, but as a follower of Jesus, is to come to you, to encourage you, to love you, and for you to do the same for me. And we do it for each other, to strengthen hands that are weak and legs that are hurting. That is all of our job. Make straight paths. I need to see someone who's running straight to know how to run straight myself. Walk straight ahead. The Message translation, it reads it this way. It says in verse 13, don't sit around on your hands. No more dragging your feet. Clear the path for the long-distance runners so no one will trip and fall, so that no one will step in a hole and sprain an ankle. Help each other out and run for it. I think this is actually one of the most beautiful and best translations there are. So if you're someone who's like, well, the Message, that's not really. I'm telling you right now, this is possibly one of the best translations of that original Greek. Clear the path. It is such a beautiful imagery. Clear the way and make a straight path. Because the image that they would have had in their minds, the original hearers of this, were the imagery of a cart or an animal that's walking on this path, and when the wheels roll over the grass, it's starting to blaze a path. It is creating a road for others to follow on, to make a way for people who are injured. And by our running, by our own commitment, what we do as we are running this race, running this journey, those of us who are not with broken legs or wounded, we are creating a path that makes it easier for others to follow behind us because they know the direction to go, and we're actually tamping the earth down so that others can follow behind us. Over and over and over again, as we've been talking for the last month, we've been challenged to run the race. And what we do, and what I've always done, is I focus on the individual race. It's about me. It's about my journey. It's about me running the life and what I'm supposed to be doing, which is this race of endurance. But it's incredible how the Word of God continually comes back and gives balance, because the balance is this. While I am individually, and we are individually responsible before God to be fully committed to run the race, the fact is also this. I can't run this race alone, and I'm not supposed to. I am a part of the body, and whether I like it or not, I am a part of this body as well as you. And I need you. I need you at times when I'm discouraged and I don't feel like I can run. And I need other people to clear that path for me so that I can run. I need you to run a straight path for me at certain times in my life. And at certain times in your life, when your leg is injured for the life of you and you can't run, the path needs to be made clear by those who are stronger and moving forward to help you. Can you imagine a pastor in a church who gets lame spiritually sometimes? Well, that's not supposed to happen. And what if they ever admitted it in front of you? That maybe they can't always run the race, that they're struggling, that they actually get discouraged and wounded about faith, about following Jesus, where they're just like, I'm not sure everything is cracked up the way it's supposed to. Because I do. It is important to be real. And you know what I do when I get injured and lame? Here's what I do. Because I do the same thing that every one of you do. I start looking around. And when I see people who aren't committed to the race and they're just kind of mediocre in their faith, I start to hear in the back of my head, this is what I hear. See, it really is just a bunch of garbage. It's just made up. It's really something that foolish people have made to believe in. It has nothing to do with power, has nothing to do with a relationship with Jesus. It has nothing to do with life at all. But it always happens also that at some point the Spirit of God sends someone into my life who's running the race hard. And I need that. And they're running a straight line. And they're making a path for me. And as I look at that path, and I look at their life, you may not even know that I'm watching you. But I am. And as you're running the race with endurance, I just see the life of God inside of you. Or I hear something, or I see someone who's serving, investing, and pouring their heart out, and I go, yeah, it is real. And I'm sick and I'm injured today, but I am committing myself again to run the race for all that it's worth. It is more important for me to know that it's real than to know that it's right. Well, how can Christianity be right if it's not real? Hebrews 12:12. So lift up your hands that have been weak. Stand upon weak legs. Walk straight ahead so that the weak leg will not be turned aside, but it will be healed. Because if you don't, those people that are hurting and they're on the edge of commitment, they may never be able to stand and walk. Do you guys know that people are watching you? Do you ever think that? And the deeper commitment comes when you make it public. And the more you make your faith public, the more people are going to watch. I mean, last week we had the 20 people baptized. We're like, yeah! And now we've got this public declaration, and it's on YouTube, and all these people are like, I have now declared that I'm going to passionately run after Jesus for the rest of my life. Some people who watch you and me, they're watching in a more cynical way. They come to church and they want to see or, hear that things aren't as the way they're supposed to be, that maybe they're doing it wrong. And they look at people's lives, hoping like crazy that they will fail so that they can just prove that, yeah, I was right. It doesn't work. This whole faith in Jesus, that is not what I'm talking about here. We are dealing with a person who has a legitimate question. They have legitimate doubts. They know the answers. They understand the way. And sometimes in their heart, even though they know that it's right, I know that Jesus is right, what they desperately want to know and need to know, it's got to be more than right. It's got to be real. This whole journey with Jesus, there's got to be something deep and intimate to the core of my bone, life-changing. It can't just be that I know Jesus is true or that the Bible is right and I'm supposed to go read my Bible. There's got to be some kind of connection. I need to hear the voice of God. It's got to move me. And then they start looking at you and they're looking at me. There was a father who walked out of his house and he was struggling in his marriage, and he and his wife had this fight, and he was kind of in this furious fit, and he just runs out the house and he's stomping down the road. And it was crunching on the snow that was underneath him, just smashing snow. It just felt good. And as he was stomping down the street in this big huff, having just left this fight with his wife, he noticed there was some kind of thing or presence behind him. So he turns around and it was his 6-year-old boy, and that 6-year-old son was doing the same thing. And it'd break my heart if I saw that. He was lifting his legs up as high as he could and just stomping them down, trying to step in his dad's footsteps, smashing that snow as hard as he could. Because our children, our sons and daughters, people in the church, our best friends, our family, our spouses, they're trying to put their feet where you and I put our feet. And then I asked the question, so what are they stepping in? Where am I walking? What is it they're stepping into if they follow me? And in terms of what you call your Christianity, where is it that you are leading them? Is it real? Is it real? Is it about a relationship with God, or is it just about getting the right answers and about having this religion? Is it about just showing up and being on church on a Sunday? In my life, if people choose for good reasons or bad to put their feet where I put my feet, ideally what I'm hoping is that I can help lead them to a relationship, into an encounter with the Holy Spirit. And that will lead them into a lifestyle change of transformation and healing. And then to be empowered to partner with God, to serve God, do the same for others. That's my hope. Have you ever asked that question of yourself, though? Where are you leading people? Do you even care? That would be a great question, too. Because people are watching. They're not as concerned about whether what you believe is right as much as, is it real? Several years ago, I was talking with a man who, he was of a different faith system. He wasn't a follower of Jesus. And we were talking about life, and we were talking about God. And he told me he'd been watching me on my journey for several years. And he was watching not just me, but other Christians and he told me, he said, "I've seen you grow. Kenny, I've seen you change. I really have." He said, "And I really believe that you believe the things that you say you believe in." He said, "I've been a witness to the things you've said and even what God's done in your life." He said, "But I've also been a witness to other things." He said, I've watched other Christians and I've been into other churches. And he said, "Here's my conclusion." He says that what is happening inside of you, Kenny, is actually not from God. He said, "Somehow I think there's something with your personality that has chosen to believe certain things, and because of that, you are changing and you're growing, and it changes how how it affects your life." He said, "But I don't actually see God in the lives of other followers of, call themselves Christians." People are looking and watching. And what people have trouble believing is that most Christians would have this intimate relationship with the living God. So what do we do about that? We strengthen the legs that are weak, strengthen the hands that are weak, and we walk a straight path. Why? So that the legs aren't sprained or hurt. And when they look at you and they look at me, they go, "Yeah, faith in Jesus is real." Or are we just doing more damage? Are we making their life worse? If you are injured, there's a couple options here that can be done. That can be made worse or they can be healed. So we need to strengthen the hands and we need to strengthen the legs because we can do more damage. And we also need to make the path straight. It says, verse 14 says, "Be at peace with all men. Live a holy life. No one will see the Lord without having that kind of life. See that no one misses God's loving favor." We need to live at peace with all people. We also need to live a holy life so that no one misses out on seeing God, connecting to God. What this text means is that we are to pursue peace with all people and pursue holiness. Because if you don't, those people who are looking at you, they will never see God. Those people whose limbs are lame and they're looking at you and they're not pursuing peace with everyone, if you're not pursuing holiness, I don't care what you have to say and what you do or how right you are and how much you know the right answers or how beautiful a church building is, if we're not pursuing peace with all people and pursuing Jesus as the passion of our heart, who cares what programs we offer as a church? Because people are going to get injured and wounded and bruised and damaged. To be at peace is a verb here. It's an action. It means pursue. It means to run fast and go after something, to pursue, to go after it, what it is that you're trying to catch. So how do you run after peace? How do you do that? I'm like, because I don't know that I always know how to do that. Behaviors, our actions, are symptoms of something else that is happening every single time. Behaviors are symptoms of something else. Peace is a symptom that I love you. So I don't actually focus on peace. What I want to focus on and focus the attention on is, well, do you love others or not? Do you actually care about others or not? Do you love this person or that person or not? Do I love my wife? Yes, I love my wife. And what that means is, well, my wife and I, we never fight. We're always smiling. We're always very thoughtful at home, always very generous, always giving. I love my wife. I'm perfect at home. And every one of you, there should have been a lot more laughter. You're like, I don't know, am I allowed to laugh at that one? Because you know it's not true, because I'm human. You know what it means. What it means is that when I'm unthoughtful, when I am argumentative, when I do become incredibly selfish, as oftentimes I do, because I do love my wife, though, I can't stand it. I hate living with that tension, most times that I'm the one who caused. I hate that tension because I love her. So what I do is I move towards her. I start to pursue peace with her. So that means I have to admit that I did it wrong. I have to admit I blew it. And I ask for forgiveness because I can't stand living in conflict with her because I do love her. We live at peace with each other when I pursue peace. Is that when I'm living? No, it's when I love her. Because when I love her, then I will naturally move towards peace. So what I want you to do is bring someone to mind that you have no peace with right now, that you're in a conflict with, that there's tension, and it could be your spouse, it could be a kid, it could be a neighbor, I don't care who you've got in mind. But the question is, and here's it, you gotta get them in, and make this a really good one. Make it someone you really can't stand. Because every one of us have it, and you're like, well, I love everyone. That's a lie. Now we'll have to talk about forgiveness next week. Do you love that person? Ugh. You're like, yes, I love that person. I'm like, really? Because if you're not at peace with them, I'm not going to believe you if you tell me you love them. Make every effort to live in peace, with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. There are some people that no matter how hard you work, no matter how much effort you put into it, I mean, you could extend love, you could extend forgiveness. No matter how hard you work at it, there's just going to be this wall against you. They're never going to give it to you. There's going to be bitterness, there's going to be anger and unforgiveness, and it will just never break. You'll never be off the hook ever in their eyes, and you won't ever redeem and heal that relationship. But the basic principle is still true. If I love, then there will be peace. The issue is not always peace, the issue is always love. That is the core issue that we have to deal with, because without peace, no man will see God, no matter how right you are. And pursue holiness, it tells us too. And I'm like, live a holy life. Great. I don't want to ask you about holiness or tell you how to live a life that is holy. What I do want to talk about is this. Do you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind? Does that register at all? Don't think about how you're living, but ask how you are loving. God, am I doing the best I can to love you? Because I know what you've done for me. Am I loving you back? And if you do, there's a part of your life that will naturally start to pursue holiness. It just happens. The deepest desire of your heart will start to be to do the things that God wants you to do. The desire will be to do His will, the things that He's asking you to do. If you don't love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, there is nothing in the world that I or anyone else on this planet could ever do to get you to obey and to lead a holy life. Sometimes the reason why churches get into this kind of strong legalistic direction and rules is very common, and why it's so enticing is because, well, maybe the Spirit of God has lost control on people's hearts because the love for God has died. People don't really love God, and if love has died in a church, there's nothing to control behavior. So now, as a pastor or as a board or however, we need to figure out, here's what we're going to do. We need more rules. I need more regulations and restrictions, and I'm going to start to shame people, and I'm going to give all these boundaries. I'm going to tell people right and wrong, because then at least maybe I can manage that. But if love is alive, we don't need to control anything because we are passionately moving towards the heart of God. I worked for a man a long time ago who he had a desire to build a big church. That was his dream, build a big church. He thought, well, if I build a huge mega church, then I will attract more people to come to church, and that must mean good things for God. But there was just so much anger in his heart, and without peace and holiness, I don't care how great the building looks, I don't care what the programs are, no one's going to ever see God. And we could add programs, and we could have ministries, and we could make this church hum like a beautiful, well-tuned machine. We could have a vision statement or a mission statement or even a doctrinal statement that is without flaw, that we're like, we could post it up, we'll put it on a poster and put it at the front doors. But without peace and holiness, without love, the leg that is weak will be wounded. Without holiness, no one's ever going to see God. Hebrews 12:12. So first, lift up your hands that we have been made weak. Stand up on your weak legs. And then we walk straight ahead so that the weak leg will not be turned aside but will be healed. And after that, be at peace with all men. And we live a holy life. No one will see the Lord without having that kind of life. And then we hit the 15th verse. See that no one misses God's loving favor. Do not let wrong thoughts about others get started among you. If you do, many people will be turned to a life of sin. See that? What it means right there, the first two words, see that. When it says see that no one misses, see that. In the original Greek, it means take the oversight. See that. Take the oversight. Take the time to look around and go after the one who is falling short of the grace of God. The person who is falling short of God's loving favor, that is a person who doesn't know God. And one of the responses that we have as followers of Jesus, and again, this is not my job. Do not tell me this is my job. It's not my job. We as followers, our job, this is not just for the church board. Every single person who is a follower of Jesus in this room, it is our responsibility to take the initiative and the oversight to be aware of those around us and to love on them and to encourage them. And I see that we are getting better and better at this. I have seen over the last year the Spirit of God moving more and more in our hearts and lives, and we are growing. And I want to tell you, I love it. I love what God's doing in our church. And I see that we are growing, and I see that we're loving. I love it. And it's not just those who have never had an encounter with God, but those who are also struggling in their journey with God. That we would continue to take the oversight to go after them. Don't let people slip away. And do it with the love and encouragement, not shame, not rules, not regulations. This is the most body-conscious text we've dealt with so far. We are responsible for each other. We are responsible to take the initiative and the oversight. I know that I'm loved. I know that I'm embraced and sealed forever in Him. But what happens to me sometimes, and I know it happens to you, there are times when I get discouraged. I get wounded, and I think that the grace of God really seems to be far away. And I feel really unforgiven, and I feel inadequate, and I feel worthless at times. And I want to hide in a hole sometimes. And the last place I want to be is at church. And I feel full of shame. And when those people in our church have a lame limb, when they're trying like crazy to see the Lord, but they can't, and they're falling short of the grace of God, the experience of the joy of God, take the oversight and go after them. Look out for them and bring them compassion and love. And if I see that you are falling and hurting, I'm going to come and get you. And I hope that you and that we would be a body that's growing so that we could look out for each other and even me, and that we are moving toward each other. I had someone, though, get mad at me, and this happens actually pretty frequently. Actually, not anymore. It used to happen frequently years ago. That people would get mad at me if I didn't go visit them when they got sick. I was supposed to go to their house, and I was supposed to go pray with them, and they pouted at me when I, finally came, and then they would unleash this anger because I didn't do what it was I was supposed to do as a pastor, and the thing is, but I knew something, especially about this one person I'm thinking of. I knew that over 6 people from our church had personally gone to their house, loved them, prayed with them, brought them food, spent time with them, investing in them, encouraging them. I didn't really know that person very well, so I didn't think I needed to go. And they didn't actually really like me, so I didn't really feel like I needed to go, put myself in a position. And I was watching, I'm like, this is so cool. The church is being the church, loving and investing in them. And then they came to me, and they're just so mad. And I was like, but the church did it. The body did it. And that was the healthiest thing. And if I went there, you would have just been mad anyhow. Because you don't like me. We had to have a different conversation. This is not a church that revolves around me. This is not a church that revolves around Kenny. It doesn't revolve around the pastor We are a body and we all matter. We all have amazing gifts. Whether you have leaned into them or not, every one of us is needed. Every one of us. Some people, we get hurt, we get wounded. And people don't reach out to them when that happens. Sometimes it does. Sometimes the seed of bitterness that it starts to grow in them, and they leave the church because they felt like they weren't valued and loved. And they get damaged. We are also a work in progress, and give each other a little bit of grace. Give each other some freedom as we are moving and learning our giftings. And if you need a target, I have big shoulders, I can take it. Our job is to strengthen the hands of others and their legs and to make paths, not just so that people who are looking for something real can see, but so that those who hurt, they have a place to walk behind us. And pursue peace with everyone. And fix your heart on love and make sure that your own heart is full of it and see that no one is left behind. We don't leave anyone behind. And if you care about this, if you are committed to this race, if this matters to you, I'm going to ask you to ask God for the name of someone right now whose limb is lame. You know someone who is hurting. And you know they're just about ready to walk away. Take the initiative and take the oversight. I'm going to pray and close this out. Dear Jesus, teach us to be a people who run with endurance the race that is set before us. This race is not run alone. Teach us what it is that we need to be running after and to leave the things that don't matter behind. Help us to pursue peace and holiness. Give us the courage to look toward others and to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind. God, I praise you that you want all of us to do this. God, that you have empowered and want to fill every single one of us. You want to draw every single one of us into the giftings and to lean into the giftings and the talents and abilities. God, you want us to all partner with you to do ministry, to change this church, to change this community, to change our families. Give us the ability to look around. As much as it depends on us, help us to do it, that we would not neglect partnering with you to love others.